The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My guest this hour is David Adelson, and he has been a meditation teacher and lecturer since 1974, and a healer with clients in 12 countries and 20 U.S. states. David has studied for more than 35 years how consciousness is the unified field and how it emerges into matter. Using his knowledge of frequencies, he created a series of silent frequency CDs and DVDs producing the frequencies most wanted today: joy, love, health, wealth, and purpose. He is the author of a soon-to-be-released book entitled Spiritual Living in a Crazy, Screwy, Nutzo World. Joining me now is David Adelson. David, welcome to the X-Zone.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Rob. I appreciate the call.
Tell me, where did you...
I actually wanted to start with a joke.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, it's something that comes up in a lot of healing sessions that I've done. It's from a book that my parents had when I was a kid called Supposing. Mm-hmm. And it was a cartoon book, and it was this, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, and he was having all these little fantasies about supposing I had all the money in the world or whatever. And they all had a twist to them. There was one that was supposing I went to the mirror one morning and I looked in the mirror and it wasn't me, and I said, "You're not me." And he said, "No, I'm Mr. Abernathy." And the interesting one that comes up a lot is this kid says, supposing I went to a fortune teller, and it has this picture of this, very feisty-looking old gypsy woman with a ball and all of this, very unpleasant-looking. He says, supposing I go to a fortune teller, and I really don't like her, I hate her, and, she's got bad breath or whatever, and she tells me that I'll travel extensively in my life, and I go home and never leave my house the rest of my life just to spite her. And the reason that I bring that up is because predictions are a very interesting thing. This woman in the cartoon can make a prediction, and then based on that, people can do or not do any number of things. Free will is constantly being enacted in this transition that the world is going through, and the human race individually, as individuals within it, and collectively are making a number of very interesting choices about the unfoldment of how this is going to happen. So I just wanted to get that out in the first place because there's some amazing technologies that could be coming, and some will and some won't. And these technologies are based on, what I've been studying for the past number of years, which is the unified field, how everything emerges from it, how frequencies are actually underlying what our gross experience is. And it's a very interesting thing because as part of the process of doing this, the ability has been developed to actually see patterns and see frequencies. And a very interesting one that came up that has no practical value but is very interesting is the Beatles, the group The Beatles, and how there was, a huge thing about Pete Best. The story of Pete Best,
Sure.
who was the drummer, and then Ringo Starr came in, and then they became the Beatles. And I think there was a movie last year that came out with a similar twist of somebody, what if you get cut and what the difference is. And what was very intriguing was looking at the patterns and the frequencies was that the Beatles needed the frequency that put them together that could allow them to be famous for as long as they have been in this world wasn't there. That complete harmonics, if you will, didn't exist with Pete Best. It did with Ringo. It actually was very interesting in that Pete Best had the energies that allowed Pete Best to be a blonde-haired person was exactly not what was needed for the Beatles.
All right, stand by. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be back with our guest this hour, David Adelson. We'll have him continue the story about Pete Best, Ringo Starr, and the Beatles, and how they merged, that's Ringo, Paul, John, and George, to make the fantastic band that we all know today that changed history. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes. Don't go away.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night, I should be sleeping like a log. But when I get home to you, I find the things that you do will make me feel alright. You know I work all day to get your money to buy a thing, and it's worth it just to hear you say you're gonna give me everything. So why on earth should I moan? 'Cause when I get you alone, you know I feel okay. When I'm home, everything seems to be right.
Exonation, David Adelson is our special guest of this hour. His website is www.awakentoheaven.org. Before we went to the break, we were talking about how Pete Best was the first drummer of the Beatles, but it just didn't click. And yet when Ringo Starr came and joined the band, man, it took off. And, well, what can I say except they made history, and they're still making history today.
They certainly are. And the interesting thing is we're talking about how everything is first emerges from the unified field and then are patterns of frequencies that are interacting within themselves, which keep interacting and keep interacting. And there is a little YouTube video on the website. You can go to awakentoheaven.org that just shows in graphic form how things emerge from the unified field. And they get to a level of convolutedness that we begin to experience. But what happens is that we can go and we can look at phenomena that happen in our life, or the Beatles, which we were talking about, and see that there are particular patterns of frequencies that, when they converge, allow certain events to happen or not. And what we were saying is that the patterns of Pete Best, which are most noticeable because he was blonde and the others were all dark-haired, that was not a pattern that would match with the other three Beatles, Paul, John, and George, in a way that would allow them to have been as famous as they were. If he'd have stayed with them, we would probably not know of them today. But when Ringo came in, he matched that. They finished and they created a wholeness of frequency that was overwhelmingly powerful. I mean, look how famous they've become. Look at how significant their impact on the world, as you said, continues to be. Now, what's interesting is that the Beatles, it was the case that the dark hair was important, and that's just indicative of certain patterns or frequencies. What's really unique is that the Beach Boys are all light-colored hair, and they're from California. But what they had going for them was all of the frequencies of the Pacific Ocean, which was such an integral part of who they were, that gave them the oomph that they could coming from a different direction on the planet, where, just the direction the Earth is spinning. All of these things have impacts. Now, the interesting thing is, this is fascinating and it's nice to know about the Beatles, but knowing that things have some relative relationship within frequencies, is there some practical benefit to this? Is there something that we can do that can change our lives? And I'll tell you, all of your listeners, they have the different things that they're interested in, and who doesn't have, the day where they're rooting for their favorite soccer team, football team, sports team, and the team is just not cutting it. They're just having a bad day, and everyone at home or in the stadium is just so frustrated. And we actually had a client that was building a soccer stadium, a whole complex with a shopping mall and everything in Central Europe. And at the time that they were doing it, when they started it, the team was doing great. But 2 or 3 years in, the team just hit a losing streak that they couldn't get out of. And what's unique in Central Europe compared to like the major leagues or the football leagues and everything we have in the U.S. is that every year they take the 3 worst major league teams and drop them out of the major leagues and take the 3 best minor teams and bump them up. Keeps it very interesting. And so what happened is this, multi-million-dollar complex, which was in the middle of being built, suddenly these people are at risk of being kicked out of the major leagues, which, of course, the developers didn't want to happen. Millions of dollars is at stake. And what we did was it's a $25 CD on the website for happiness and bliss, and we sent it to them, and we said, now play this frequency in the stadium for 3 hours before the game and during the game and for 3 hours after the game. You don't have to do anything else that's different. And so they did. And the first day that they did it, they won the game. And a week later, the same thing happened. They played it again, and again they won the game. And the third week it happened again, and they won, and they've never looked back. And after that happened, the owner of or one of the principals and president, CEO of this major development company called me up and said, we want a program like that for the whole company with 500 employees, which they've been running for a couple of years. So the thing is that we can take these silent frequencies and we can apply them directly in our lives to whatever's happening. This particular frequency for happiness, we were told when the whole thing was created that if people were playing it in their cars on the freeway during traffic jams and rush hour, there would never be road rage. It just makes a difference of soothing out and awakening and enlivening that quality of bliss which is ever present everywhere.
How did you discover which frequency does what?
Well, interestingly enough, we didn't have to do it that way. We didn't have to go backwards and analyze what frequency does what. Once we knew how to do this, we just said, we want the frequency of happiness. We want it's like you go into the restaurant, you want chicken. You don't have to go through all the other items on the menu. You just say, I want chicken. And in the same way, we just said, these are the frequencies that we wanted. It's an interesting question that comes up a lot, and we just took the simple way. We just said, which ones will create this?
But who did you ask this question to?
Well, this is an interesting thing because what happened in all the years of doing these meditations and things, about my son when he was 13, which is now a dozen years ago or something, had cancer. And when he came down with cancer, at the same time as that, it was, I don't know if you want to call it a blessing in disguise or whatever, but at the same time as that happened, all these experiences of different perceptions started happening in my life, and I started being able to see all these interesting things that were new to me. And at that time, this cognition, this development came to connect to higher beings, and so I've been working with Divine Mother pretty much since that level. And by Divine Mother, we just mean that most refined frequency. We'll say the first frequency out as the unified field comes into existence. And it's a very personal relationship. We talk back and forth in English. And I once asked her how come she talked to me in English, and she said this word to me that was the most interesting word I've ever heard, and it seemed to be thousands of years old. It just had all these frequencies from like the Mesopotamia or something, no idea what it meant. And when she just said that word, it was just like, oh, you talk to me in English because that's what I understand. So, and what happens is that the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. And we've been working with clients, as you read in the beginning, all over the world, 12 countries around the world, and working with this connection and working with these frequencies. And quite frankly, we've had very significant and amazing results. We had a woman call us up from Scotland one time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we recognize, how can this be done? How can we do it over the phone? How can we do it at a distance? And the whole point is that if we're starting from the unified field, and the unified field, I'm going to assume that your listeners may have some idea, but I want to just cover it. The unified field is that which modern physicists are coming to recognize underlies everything in the physical world. It's called the unified field of all the laws of nature. That is, the different laws of nature, such as the electromagnetic laws of nature, gravity. There's something called a weak force and a strong force, and there's all these different forces. And people don't need to understand it, but the bottom line is that what they're saying is the common denominator is this unified field. And the unified field is infinite. It's absolutely everywhere. And I'll tell you, there's actually, again on the website, awakentoheaven.org, there's a sample chapter from the book, Spiritual Living in a Crazy, Screwy, Nutzo World, that you can just download. And it's a picture book. It's meant to be very simple, and it shows you how to find infinity in your daily life. It's just a real quick little thing. And
Wait a sec. How can you find infinity?
Excuse me. I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll show you. Now, but I really recommend you look at it because the visuals help it. But I can walk you through it.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Everybody understands that the universe is expanding.
Mm-hmm.
It may be expanding and contracting, whatever it is. It's expanding.
Sure.
So if the universe is expanding, what's it expanding into?
Infinity.
So infinity.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's expanding into infinity, great. But what's the definition of infinity? It means that there's no beginning and there's no end. So if you look at this sample chapter, you'll see I've drawn, the universe. But what you see is that if the universe is expanding into infinity, then it must be that infinity does not start at the edge of the universe and move outward. It actually must go in both directions, from the outside, from the edge of the universe outward, but it also must go inward. Make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay. If it goes inwards, then it must come into the Milky Way galaxy because it has no end. It's infinite. That's the definition. And if it comes into the Milky Way galaxy, then it comes into our solar system, and it comes into our Earth, and it comes into our country and our city and our home and us. So infinity must be there. The same thing that the universe is expanding into is also within you.
All right, stand by.
Pardon?
You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Interesting conversation. Interesting gentleman. David Adelson is our special guest, Exo Nation. www.awakentoheaven.org. That's www.awakentoheaven.org. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. David Adelson, and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Hi, this is Eric Rawls of Cosmoverse.com, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Hi, this is Blade Runner, and you are listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, I'm Laura Sabrin of Cease to Fields Organic Vineyard in Jordan, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, my name is Lady Ashley, the White Witch of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal talk radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Turn it up. Big wheels keep on turning, carry me home to see my kids, singing songs about the Southland. I miss Alabama once again, and I think it's a sin. Yes. Well, I heard Mr. Young sing about her. Well, I heard O'Neill put it down. Well, I hope Neil Young will remember. I said that man don't need him around anyhow. Sweet home Alabama.
Exonation David Adelson is our special guest this hour. His website is www.awakentoheaven.org. And David has a new book that is going to be coming out very shortly, I would imagine. It's called Spiritual Living in a Crazy, Screwy, Nutzo World. Once again, the website is awakentoheaven.org. David, can we then compare the unified field to the DNA of all that is?
It's an interesting question, and the answer is no, because the DNA of all that, I'm sorry, it's a very intriguing question, and you need to understand that the unified field is a very lively field, but nothing exists within it. It has all potential within it. It's the home of all the laws of nature in an as yet unexpressed state. They haven't come into anything relative yet. Now, the DNA, we're going to say, based on your question, is analogous to that pattern which directs further unfoldment beyond that in terms of the cell. Does that work for you?
Okay, let me ask you this then. What would happen if the unified field ceased to exist?
Well, it can't.
What happens if it did?
Where would it go?
What would happen to existence as we know it?
Well, see, they're two separate things, or they're depending on the angle that you're looking through.
But
very interestingly, when we look at the unified field from our daily existence, from relative, and this is fairly abstract, and I kind of want to keep it in terms of, what's practical, what can people use, how can they use this to their life. So the thing is that when we look to unified field, from our side, we say it's in an unexpressed, we may use the term unmanifest, infinite state, and we're relative and we have certain point values. And your question of where would the DNA fall is the DNA would be the pattern that is the very first expression into relativity of the unified field that guides the unfoldment so that people look the way they look and they don't have, 18 eyes and trees are the way they are. So that's where the DNA would be. Now, the thing is, what I'd like to do, and it's an interesting question when you say what happens if you could get rid of the unified field. You could get rid of relative existence, but you can't get rid of the unified field because it's infinite, and where would you put it? I mean, where would it go? So the intriguing thing now, but here's the interesting thing, and this I think might be in the direction you were thinking of going, and that is how can we use it in our daily life? And we talked a minute ago about how the unified field is and infinity. We went through that exercise of finding infinity first outside the universe and then within our own room and in our own physiology. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's looking at this scenario from the level of modern physics. But we can also look at it from what we could call psychology or mind-body or spiritualism or whatever. And what we find is, and this is, again, 30-some-odd years of research into this, is that consciousness, our own consciousness, which underlies being awake, yours, mine, every single one of your listeners, you do not have an experience if you are not awake. Do you agree? When you're asleep, you're not having an experience.
Well, when you're asleep, you have a dream, and a dream is an experience, so I disagree with that statement.
Okay. The dream is there is a quality of wakefulness in the dream. There is some awareness.
But it all depends on who you talk to. There are those people who believe that during a dream state we have an out-of-body experience, which is a true experience to that person.
Right, and I'm not arguing that. In fact, this supports that. What I'm saying is that in sleep state, we have what's normally termed non-awareness. And then we have waking state, and as you're saying, dream state, where we have there's something, and the underlying quality that links it to is what we could call awareness, that there's some experience going on.
Well, yes,
Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but I also would like to bring to your attention the people that have who walk in their sleep. They're having an experience.
Good. They're having an experience, and this is my point. Okay, we don't need to isolate waking, dreaming, sleeping. What we can say is whenever there's an experience being had, there has to be some experiencer.
Well, of course, that only makes sense because without an experiencer, you can't have an experience.
Good. So somebody is having the experience, and that person that's having the experience must have some kind of consciousness to have the experience, some level of some kind of consciousness.
That makes sense.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. We never run out of experiences, do we? You know anybody who's ever run out of experiences? Anybody in the world?
Well, if you say, there are those people who get bored because their life is humdrum. I don't know if that would qualify, but
boredom is. My son brings that up a lot. Dad, I'm bored, and I say, enjoy it while you're young. Because you don't get to do it very much when you're old for most of us. But boredom is still an experience. So the point is that all these diverse experiences, those that you've mentioned, walking in your sleep, flying in dreams, eating, drinking, watching TV, going to the bathroom, all these experiences, and they just keep going, and millions and billions of beings are having these experiences time and time again. So whatever the source of all of these experiences is, has pretty much got to be infinite. Does that make sense? Because they just keep coming.
Until you die. Because if all these experiences were infinite, you'd still have these experiences after death, which you don't.
Well, I want to bring this home again to the practical point. So I understand about the after-death thing, and it's questionable. There are, I'd rather not go into that discussion.
Why not?
The point is... Because there's debates about experiences after death and whether you do or do not have experiences. And from my experiences, you do have experiences after death. And from people that I know, you do. So some people are going to say that you don't have an experience after death, but what are they basing that
But isn't it healthy?
on?
Isn't it healthy to look at every aspect of something like we're doing now instead of just going on a focused trip?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
But my point about that, so to bring this back is, if there is an experience, there is an experiencer.
Right.
Okay. If there is an experiencer, then that experiencer must have some type of consciousness there. And if there is some type of consciousness, and if we're not running out of experiences and don't see that we're about to run out of experiences, then the source of that would be infinite. And then here's the interesting point. If it is infinite, are you allowing it's infinite, or are you unhappy with that?
Well, keep going.
Okay. If it is infinite, then it must be the same infinity that is the unified field. Because if infinity means no boundaries, how can you have more than one? Where are you going to put it? And now here's the practical application of that. We show you how to locate infinity. Now, if you can put that to practical use, if everything comes out of infinity, then you can pick those frequencies to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So we can create a frequency that can be played in a stadium and have it have an influence. But we can discuss whatever you'd like. Where would you like to go?
No, I'd like to stick on this track, because how did you once again the frequency that you played in, or you had the organizers or the owners of the stadium play, once again, where did this was channeled to you from an ultimate being, and where does this ultimate being come from? Is it on another planet? Is she in the ether? Is she on a parallel universe, another dimension?
So all good questions, and the truth is all of them are correct. But in terms of what we're discussing, in terms of, let's go back again to this unified field which starts vibrating. And again, there's a little, it's about a minute and a half, it might be 2 minutes tops, little graphic video on the website.
Now just let me tell something to the Exo Nation who may have just joined us over the last couple of minutes. We're talking about the unified field theory here as part of our conversation with David Adelson. Now, in physics, a unified field theory is a type of field theory that allows all that is usually thought of as fundamental forces, Exo Nation, and elementary particles, and it allows it to be written in terms of a single field. Now, there's no accepted unified field theory at all. It remains an open line of research. The term was created by Albert Einstein, who attempted to unify the general theory of relativity with electromagnetism, hoping to recover an approximation for quantum theory. A theory of everything is closely related to the unified field theory, but differs by not requiring the basis of nature to be the fields, and also attempts to explain all physical constants of nature. So that's what we're talking about, unified field theory.
Well done, Rob.
Thank you.
Very good. So, and that's exactly the point. And the interesting thing is that you're exactly right. There is no generally, the basic premise is that there are a lot of these physicists who agree in principle with the idea of a unified field.
Right.
They just haven't determined which recipe they like the best, if you will, which equation or which thing. But basically, they can, duke that out in their field, but for the rest of us, we can start working with it. Now, because you asked about where the source of this information came, a very valid question. And what I wanted to explain is that from the unified field, there is, and again, you go to awakentoheaven.org, you click on the video updates, and right on that page there's a little 2-minute video that shows you how manifest world comes out of the unified field. And if you look at that, basically what it says is something happens within the unified field, some vibrations start moving, and that gets more and more complicated until we experience the world. Now, you had mentioned earlier about this idea of a DNA.
Yes.
That is an organizing principle, concept, unit, however you want to describe it, from which filters what's coming through it and gives it direction into the world. And that very first sprouting out of the unified field, which underlies everything in creation, is that intelligence, which could be said to be the DNA of the universe. It's that organizing principle which allows, again, trees to be trees, planets to be planets, oceans to be oceans, water to be wet. Now, if we allow that to have a personality, then we can call that first sprouting God, Divine Mother, whatever, Lord Christ, whatever our different tradition is. And from that level, we can Kuan Yin, it's all good. And so again, something happened years ago in my family. I've been involved in these kinds of programs pretty much my whole life, and very specifically the types of meditation that I was doing from 1972 on. And after 20-some, 30-some years of this, had some experience of being able to connect to that level, and then from that bring out different possibilities, which include these specific frequencies that we could play in a stadium, or that people have used playing on their laptops in business meetings to change the tension in the room to be something where it's much more harmonious. We've used them with people that are ill to help bring about more health kinds of frequencies. There's a principle that, people seem to resonate with, what you give out comes back to you. And if we can enliven within ourselves or give ourselves the experience of the frequencies that we want to be that magnet. So if we want more health, we can add the frequency of health to our life and then experience more health. And this has been the experience of people who have used these. Some people have great experiences. We had one woman who got the Wealth DVD and played it once, and the next day her house, which had been on the market for quite some time, sold, for the asking price.
All right, stand by. I've got to take my final break. Exonation. David Adelson is our guest. www.awakentoheaven.org. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Oh, I could hide 'neath the wings of the bluebird as she sings. The 6 o'clock alarm would never ring, but it rings and I rise, wipe the sleep out of my eyes. My shaven razor's cold and it stings. Cheer up, sleepy Jean, oh, what can it mean to a daydream believer and a homecoming queen? You once thought of me as a white knight on his steed.
David Adelson is our guest, Exonation. We're talking about he's got a new book that's coming out. It's called Spiritual Living in a Crazy, Screwy, Nutzo World. And David's website is www.awakentoheaven.org. David, are there only certain people that react to these frequencies, or is it something that is universal that whether you want to or even know this frequency is playing, it's going to affect you?
The thing is, the frequency will have an effect, but some people will experience it more profoundly than others. It just depends. That's the same with any healing modality that you do. There are some people, again, the doctors can perform surgery and go in and physically manipulate somebody, and somebody will have an amazing experience and be completely healed and never have a problem again, and somebody else will be back 6 weeks later with complications. So it can have an influence, and it can be a subtle influence, it could be a known influence, it could be an unknown influence. If somebody were to, the CDs are not that expensive. It might be worth a shot to try one.
Okay, let me ask you this: has there been any blind test research on your CDs? Have you actually brought them into medical centers or hospitals and given it a try under tested conditions?
No, and it's very frustrating to me that I haven't. We actually were looking at doing that again through a source in Central Europe, and it fell through. It's something that I would love to have done because people are having experiences. Again, some more, some less.
But is it possible that your CD frequencies are simply a placebo effect?
I don't know how the placebo effect would have affected the people in the football stadium because they didn't know it was playing. I don't know how it would have affected the people, say, in a business meeting when they don't know it's playing. It's
all right.
silent.
How about the rule of how about the law of coincidence then?
We allow anything.
You know,
we think the world is all possibilities. So sure, we would buy that. People have been using some of these frequencies for several years now and having some very good results. If you put it on, on the TV, these people who are running it at home, they put on the one for love and harmony, and their pets just go curl up in front of the TV and stay there for days if they run it for days.
My cat and dog do that when we have a war movie on, so I don't know. Maybe they're using that frequency during the war movie. David, you and I have to say so long for now. I want to thank you very much for joining us. Exonation, my guest this hour has been David Adelson. And I've got to tell you, Exonation, without any concrete research, whether it's $2, $3, or $4, I would not waste my money. Coincidence plays a major part in a lot of what we see here in the X Zone. So unless you're sure, I wouldn't buy it. Plus, let's take a look at things. If it was this wonderful, this marvelous, and worked these miracles, don't you think they'd be using it in hospitals? Senior centers, hospices, schools? I'm a doubting Thomas when it comes to this frequency thing. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.